I'm going to talk about generated gated now. There are a few things that I'll need to gloss over in order to explain it, and it's going to be a real difficult episode, saying that I'm going to have to gloss over things that we haven't reviewed yet, and that we will review in later segments, because a lot of things, again, with Karma, a lot of things are interconnected, and it's really difficult to explain one part of the system without explaining some other parts of the system. It's daunting, but it's also an adventure, so let's continue on this adventure. In the phase group, we have this length mode. Now, when the length mode is set to actual, it depends on the note series length to determine when the next phase step occurs. I'm just going to play a C major triad, which is going to create a series based in the key of C major. So when I get to the top, it goes back down, and that's easily understood in the phase length when it's going up with phase 1, and the next phase 2 it's going down, or it's going forwards in phase 1 and backwards in phase 2. So you can see it's going forwards here, and then backwards when it gets to the top. And you can actually see the phase pattern is stepping based on the length, the actual length of the note series. But if I were to change this to based on the time signature, then it would change after a certain amount of beats. So it would actually keep going and keep cycling before it starts going the other way. And that's important because when we're in generated gated, we're not functioning off of the note series anymore. In fact, that changes. So if I change this length mode back to actual, and then I change this to generated gated, we see that this automatically switches to time signature. And that's because we're not necessarily referencing the length of the note series anymore. We're just referencing the actual notes that are in the note series. I shouldn't have said the word actuals because I don't want to confuse you with the length mode setting actual, but basically, we're only focused on the notes that are in this series. Now, if I hit a chord and generated gated, we're actually just playing a C major chord. That's me playing it on the keyboard versus triggering it from this pad. On this pad, I just have a regular, I have a regular C major that I'm just triggering from the keyboard. So that's one thing that changes when you switch to generated gated. Then the next thing that changes is our cluster group. We no longer have access to the cluster group. If I go back to generated riff, the cluster group means that we are playing one note in the series at a time when the cluster is at 1. But if I have the cluster at 2, you could probably deduce that we play 2 notes in the series at a time. But when I switch to generated gated, we lose our cluster group since we're just playing the input chord. And that is not to say, this is going to really confuse you, that's not to say that the note series no longer has an effect on the chord that we generate, because I could switch it to a scalic type and it would make a more robust chord. But we're definitely not focusing on the note series in the same way that we are with a generated riff type GE. We do gain access again to the cluster group if I were to switch to a different subgroup of the generated gated type, but again, it's not behaving the same way. This now has a different, it's now serving a different purpose. So before, when we were stepping through like the note series as a cluster of notes via this parameter, now we're actually choosing notes in the series. So this would be the first note from the series. But if I change the cluster group to 2, it would be the second note in the series. And you know what might help us see this better? If I open Note Display in a separate window. So that way I don't have to keep switching back and forth. And if it would let me grab it, I'll just put this down here. Ooh, does it erase that? I didn't notice that. When I drag this over the screen, it'll actually erase things. So anyway, yeah, let's go down to cluster group. Nice. I can also hold shift, and then that will allow me to enter in multiple nodes in the diagram. It'll allow me to check multiple blocks. And with this, we would actually be playing multiple notes from the series. So it's not exclusive where, like, let me just explain. So if I have the first one selected, we're playing the first note in the series. Well, if I have the first one and the second one selected or enabled, then I will be playing the first two notes in the series. So if I were to, oh, I didn't need to switch back because we have it right here. Sorry, force of habit. So anyway, if I have them all selected, and then I've hit it, then we're going to be playing 10. Now over here, I just have a regular C for chord pad 1. If I play that, it's not going to generate a note series. It's just going to basically generate C's in octaves, and it won't generate 10 of them. So it will only play the amount that are there. And then, of course, I could take notes away. Nice. Cool. So that's. I'm gonna go ahead and call this part 1. Let's see if we're at around 10 minutes. 6:30. It's fine. Yeah, we're gonna call this part 1, and then I'll go over the rest of these in part 2, starting with gate type on velocity.